Cyclops, also known as Scott Summers, the first X-Man, the field leader, the Boy Scout, Slim, the One-Eyed Wonder, Xavier Jr., or, as fans of the movies know him as, the boring one. And I won't blame you if you had this opinion. Comic book fans have been saying this for a while, but we don't really get the best representation of him in the movies. Often he's relegated to Wolverine's sidekick or foil, a placeholder, a romantic obstacle, or worse, in X3 he is just a casualty. But in the comics, Cyclops is a cornerstone of the mutant community, a conflicted leader, a hardened soldier, a revolutionary. So how has he fumbled so hard? Let's look to the comics to see who Scott Summers should be, and then let's compare that to the Scott Summers we have seen in live action so far. As usual with my comic book videos, I'm gonna be suggesting some comic arcs, and all these are gonna be fairly Cyclops dense, so hopefully you find a new reason to love our laser-eyed mutant. Scott is the beating heart of the X-Men, and I don't mean in a sentimental sort of way. That probably goes to Storm or Jean Grey more times than not. He is the one who holds the team together when all else is in ruins. As with most X-Men, his powers are representative of who he is as a person. For example, Wolverine is a brash, savage bar fighter of a hero. Storm is as beautiful and regal as she is powerful, like the most dangerous weather events. Beast is tragic in that his intelligence is the antithesis of his appearance, as is Nightcrawler's religious origins and his appearance. All powers define the character in some form. Cyclops, like his optic blasts, is volatile, explosive, and yet always restrained. He can never relax or let go. He leads the team with discipline, because in the cases where he doesn't, people get hurt. But beneath his stoicism is a tortured psyche, abandonment by his family, guilt over the damage of his mutant ability, loss of all close to him in pursuit of his mission. His childhood was shattered by his own orphanage and the mistreatment of his mutant race. He never got to be a kid. He was forged into a leader far too young, and he knows no other way of being. And this is Scott's role. His greatness is defined by this. He is heir to Xavier's dream, but he is also its greatest critic. He believes in peace, but he is willing to fight a war. He believes in justice, but has learnt that survival often means compromise. Growing up seeing them battle in philosophies, in a lot of ways Cyclops is a student of both Xavier and Magneto. He has been witness to Professor X's most heinous decisions and has been a part of Magneto's most heroic moments. He has intimately seen the Professor abuse people's trust and alter their memories against their wills. He has seen Magneto fight for the survival of mutants beside humans. He has also seen them at war with one another. If you want to see the nuance of this character, let's speed blitz Cyclops' involvement in some defining X-Men arcs. First storyline I want to gloss over is the 2009 crossover arc Utopia, and I stress that I am summarizing these. Nothing I say here will replace reading the original volumes. Back to Utopia. Prior to the events of Dark Reign, which is Norman Osborn effectively taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers, Scott has set up his own covert Black Ops X-Men team, unknown to practically every other leader in the mutant community. As the events of Utopia kick off, there is an anti-mutant riot in San Francisco. Who is seen as leader of the mutant race and is delegated to answer all questions from the public all the way to the president? It isn't Wolverine, obviously, it's not Xavier, it's Cyclops. Cyclops also creates a new mutant nation by the name of Utopia out of Magneto's old asteroid M. But that's a whole other thing, so moving on to our next storyline, Schism. Real quick, in Schism, the events are set off basically because Cyclops is again the representative of mutant kind, and is now addressing the UN, ordering them to halt worldwide Sentinel production. Moving quickly to Avengers vs X-Men, and this will be heavily glossed over, so don't get mad I'm not talking about the Phoenix Five, but Cyclops effectively disagrees with Professor X and does what Magneto has flirted with for years. He kills Xavier. That's not what was the most harrowing thing, however. Everyone in comic books comes back except maybe Uncle Ben. For over half a decade, no mutants had been born since Scarlet Witch hexed the world with her words, "No more mutants." After being arrested, Hank and Cyclops are talking, and Scott finds out that due to his actions, there are new mutants being born across the globe. Due to him becoming the villain, he has now become mutant kind's martyr. He has not only saved mutant kind, but also set them on a position forward to enter the Krakoa era, which is fleshed out in House of X and beyond. Scott even becomes a free man and again, leader of the X-Men. In the following arcs, he evolves from student to soldier to revolutionary commander. He stops just being the guy who leads the X-Men and becomes the man who defines them. The same character representation cannot be said for the movies. So let's unpack all that I've said there. A great Cyclops portrayal needs to capture moral complexity. He's a man who often does the wrong thing for the right reasons. He needs to capture emotional repression. He doesn't often show what he's feeling, but it's always there. Leadership. He is the field commander of the X-Men, and his tactical mind is second to none. Sacrifice. He puts the mission before himself every time, often at great personal cost. And his relational depth. His love for Jean Grey, his rivalry with Wolverine, and his push-pull with Xavier define him. Okay, let's first look at James Marsden from the original trilogy. He had the look. He had the controlled demeanor. He could have been the Cyclops we needed, but the writing never gave him a chance, instead favoring Xavier, Magneto, Jean Grey, and obviously Wolverine.
Prove it. You're a dick. Okay.
In the first movie, he's a two-dimensional leader who is overshadowed by Logan, effectively just being a part of a hollow love triangle between Wolvie and Jean. It's a total waste of the character. In the second movie, he is taken prisoner and brainwashed, so we aren't really getting much of that radicalized leader in the second movie either. And in the third movie, he's dead. Sorry for the spoilers, but in the first 3 movies, that's almost all that happens. Let's give credit where credit's due though. Marsden did give us this sick scene. And he did make Magneto sound like this. The next portrayal we got is Tim Pocock playing a young Scott in X-Men Origins Wolverine. Everyone's favorite Wolverine movie, surely. This was a cameo, not a character. Barely any lines and barely any presence. It did incorporate a pretty sick visual though. Moving on to Tye Sheridan from the prequel series, I'll admit, even with arguably less screen time, Sheridan's younger Scott has more emotional weight. We see him discovering his powers, grappling with becoming a mutant, bonding with Jean, all solid foundational development for a character that was skipped with Marsden. In Dark Phoenix, there is even glimpses of leadership, and he even stands his own for a minute against the very established Magneto. We also have genuine moments between himself and Jean where he defends her, he stands by her. We also have some of the best Cyclops scenes off the rip, like and also this one. But again, the franchise didn't prioritize him. He was never the narrative core. At most, he was a B-plot. He never became the commanding, conflicted leader of the comics. There was no schism, no Utopia, just potential left hanging. So in summary, Marsden was a leader in theory, but we never got to truly see it. Sheridan was the heart, but not the weight, and Pocock was technically there, so I guess he gets participation points. Now, why am I talking about Cyclops at all? Why do I care about the representation of Professor X's prodigy? Well, with Avengers Doomsday around the corner, Marsden has been confirmed as returning to the role of Cyclops. So how do we fix this issue? How do we have Scott Summers a genuine leader of this team? How do we make Cyclops great again? Well, we don't even need to look that far. Literally, it's more recent than any of the live action appearances. X-Men 97 doesn't just revisit the Cyclops we left in the original 90s animated series, it restores him. I mean, throughout this video, I've been drip feeding you Cyclops fight scenes. Just look at this clip from the first appearance of Scott in the show.
Hang tight.
I know this doesn't address the leadership qualities, but tell me this isn't an infinitely more exciting use of his powers than anything we ever got in live action. Also, we got the coolest superhero landing ever.
To me, my X-Men.
This does prove his tactical mind to an extent, but I really wanted to highlight what else this show gets right about the quote-unquote boring X-Man. From the opening episodes, this Scott Summers is every inch the character we know from the comics. He's a decisive field commander, he's emotionally tortured, he's quietly romantic, he carries the dream of savior while grappling with the burden of leading a team that's falling apart, and when Charles leaves the Earth, it's Scott who has to keep the X-Men alive. He's constantly pulled in multiple directions. The leader, the husband, the surrogate father, the protector of mutant kind. He loves Jean deeply, but a resurrection and the arrival of Madeline Pryor force him to confront the consequences of his choices. He shows rage, guilt, tenderness, and resolve, often within the same episode. Let's dig into that though. How is this Scott Summers the template for what Marvel should be using going forward? In X-Men 97, Scott Summers is faced with layered, morally ambiguous decisions that push him beyond the black and white morality of earlier adaptations. With Charles gone, Scott assumes leadership under murky ethical waters. He must balance Xavier's peaceful philosophy with a need for real politics. His decisions, including militarizing the X-Men's operations and refusing to back down when the public turns hostile, show him stepping into the kind of moral no man's land we saw in Schism or Utopia in the comics. When faced with the pregnancy of Jean Grey, he is pulled towards being a father and leaving the X-Men, only to be pulled right back when Magneto is given the role of leader. This version of Cyclops perfectly captures this deep, emotional control, but also shows when it cracks. Repression isn't about showing nothing like the original X-Men movies, it's about showing just enough that the audience feels what he's burying. Scott rarely breaks down, but you see the strain in his voice, his posture, his subtle glances at Jean, his rage during the Genosha attack, his loss of faith in Xavier, and his frustration with humanity all come through in flashes. And for a team that's basically a superhero soap opera, Summers is never melodramatic. His responses are always earned. In regards to his field leadership, he's clearly the commander during his missions, calling shots with calm precision. His orders save lives. Characters look to him for guidance, and he never freezes in a crisis. This is a product of being entrusted with turning Xavier's dream into plans since his teens. He's not just a tactical leader or a tragic figure, he's a fully developed protagonist, riddled with guilt, capable of tenderness, afraid of failure but absolutely unwilling to stop fighting for mutant kind. In live action, we've never had that version, but now X-Men 97 has given Marvel Studios the perfect foundation. If the MCU wants to do justice to Scott Summers, here's what they need to pull from X-Men 97. He needs a commanding presence. Scott doesn't follow, he leads, and when he leads, people listen. Show us that. We need to see that. Emotional depth. He's not cold, he's burning. Give him scenes where that restraint slips, where the guilt and grief show through. Moral tension. Cyclops often makes impossible decisions. He's not always right, but he always takes responsibility. Let him struggle with that. Power as a metaphor. Don't just show optic blasts. Use them to tell a story. When Scott lets loose, it should mean something. And relationships that matter, whether it's with Jean, Xavier, or even Wolverine. The way Scott connects to others should reveal who he is and who he isn't. There's also rumors that Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom will be orchestrating a classic hero battle with the Avengers and the Fantastic Four teaming up to take on the X-Men in the upcoming Avengers Doomsday. So yes, we may potentially be getting a version of Avengers vs X-Men, which is one of Cyclops' most dramatic storylines and also the one where he is center to all the action. With Doomsday likely to explore cosmic stakes, fractured alliances, and new leadership hierarchies, there's no better time to let Cyclops step into the spotlight. Let him clash with the other Avengers. Let him make the unpopular decisions. Let him be the mutant who doesn't just fight for survival, but for something better. If Marvel Studios takes inspiration from X-Men 97, they could finally give audiences the definitive live-action Cyclops, a man who's not just powerful but essential, not just a team member but a man with a vision.